I beat Dark Souls 2, by the way.
Yeah, it only took you 350 hours.
It takes a lot of time to get good. Welcome back to Cartridge Based Radio. I am Donald, joined once again by Brad.
Hello.
Brad, what do you know about piracy?
Lots of nothing. I know nothing about piracy. Almost got me.
I'm the captain now. What do you know about gold?
Well, I mean, I don't have a bank account. Like, all my money is just in gold that I've buried around my yard.
What do you know about Pirates! Gold for the Sega Genesis?
It's in my top 5, like, all-time games. And once you get into the top 5, it really gets kind of interchangeable. You know, we're talking about one of the best games ever made as far as I'm concerned. And when I did my Genesis webpage where I played every single Genesis game and I ranked the top 50 of them, Pirates Gold was number 1. I sort of knew that it was the heavy favorite when I started the project. I hadn't played every single Genesis game, but I'd played most of the well-known ones and the ones that were considered really good, and I liked Pirates Gold better than all of them. So it would have taken something I'd never heard of and never played to have knocked off Pirates Gold. War Song came really close, but Pirates Gold is, as far as I'm concerned, the best Genesis game there is. Maybe the best 16-bit game.
Pirates Gold is actually a sequel to the PC classic Pirates.
Yes, that is why Pirates Gold is one of the few Genesis games that has a punctuation mark right in the middle of the title. It's Pirates with an exclamation point. Gold.
So you go through a character creation thing at the beginning, which I made Pirate McPirate Face for my first pirate. I couldn't actually fit all the letters in that, so he was just McPirate. Then you instantly see like a scene from Escape from Monkey Island. The first thing you see is your little pirate standing on a street, and it looks kind of Monkey Islandish at first. And the first town I was in, they're like, we don't deal with pirates. It's like, thank you, game, for starting me in this town where no one wants to deal with me.
You haven't even done anything piratey at that point. They just know. You must have picked the wrong time era, because when you set up your character, you can pick what year it is. The one I picked, like, I started in a town where they just let me walk right in and talk to the governor of the island. Like, no credentials, no talking to anybody else. They're just like, hey, go talk to the governor. And the governor's like, hey, we're at war with Spain. Go kill them. And
I did the one where you are traders and merchant, because I didn't know what I was doing. So I figured the best way to learn a game was just start clicking buttons and see what happens, which I found out results in being shipwrecked a whole lot, waiting for a former crew member to come pick you up.
Yeah, which is also great. To just be shipwrecked on an island your own. I hope a ship comes by, and I hope it just happens to have somebody that I know on it.
You keep getting lucky over and over in that game, because it's always a former crewmate. You gotta start wondering, are you just a really bad pirate that you keep falling overboard, but your crewmates seem to make it to land, but you end up on a deserted island?
Yeah, you're always stranded alone. Like, you hit the coral reef or whatever, and you're thrown overboard, and the rest of the pirates are like, oh, hey, the ship's fine. We're okay. By the way, have you seen the captain?
And the first mate's like, oh, he died in the coral reef accident. Oh, well, they just accept it because he's probably paying the same amount you were, so whatever. And then you're trapped on the island for like, what, a year and a half, and then someone comes gets you. And it's like, okay, you can be the captain now.
Yeah, you're in charge again.
It's like, no, you did a bad job pirating. You fell off your boat. You don't instantly get a boat back. That's got to be a pirate rule.
You know, who's running the ship that finds you? Like, it says that you've been found by your former crew, but, like, is it one of your former crew has found you? Or did they sign on with another ship and another captain? And, like, the captain picks you up and you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to be the captain again, right? And he's like, yeah, that's cool, pirate guy who we found on an island. We were a legitimate trading vessel, but sure, we'll pirate it up now.
Or it's much darker than that. He's like, hey, captain, can I speak to you in your quarters for a minute? He's like, sure, person we just found. I'd like to ask you about what happened? And then they hear a rustle in the captain's quarter, and the pirate guy comes out. He's like, well, I'm your captain now, and we're pirates. What happened to the captain? He died mysteriously.
I don't know. He had a stroke.
There's a knife in his head. It caused a stroke. So you're tasked with many things, and you told me you played this game like 50 times so far.
Yeah.
I started 4 pirates and successfully just was horrible at this game, but I really loved it as I was being horrible at it. So you're tasked with, you can do like quests. Believe you told me you could take over land.
Yeah, that is difficult, especially in the Genesis version. But yeah, it's possible. They made an Xbox version in 2005, which is mostly the same game, but, prettier graphics and a little bit deeper. And I'm trying to remember if you can also take over cities in that one or not. But in the Genesis one, you can, but it's hard.
At first, I thought I was going to do that. It did not go well. McPirate did not last long. And then I thought I would just start trading from one town to the next. Obviously, I could not screw that up. And then I ran out of food. And my crew said, hey, do you want to live on this little island?
And you were probably like, yeah, it's got a ton of food on it. I would love that. Thank you. Always looking out for your captain. You guys sail off and starve.
So my trade business went well for quite a while. And then I hit a coral reef and fell off my boat. And then they gave me a small boat back. It set my trade empire back quite a bit. Because I had 2 cannons and I had to fight bigger boats that had many cannons. The ship combat in this game is amazing.
It's amazing, but it's also, you don't have to do it. In fact, you stand to lose more than you gain by being in an extended ship contest. Usually you just want to ram the other boat as quickly as possible and board it. The ship combat's really good though. I mean, for a Genesis game, like the wind factors in, you have different types of shot that you can use. You can raise or lower your sails and be faster, but expose yourself to more damage.
It's very stressful too as you're trying to line up your shots, because if you miss, you have to wait till the cannons reload, which opens you up for damage. And like you said, it's better just to ram and then get into a sword fight to take the entire ship. You think there'd be more to it. It's just one single little pretty easy sword fight.
One thing I'd always thought would have been amazing, you could pull this off on a modern system, and Assassin's Creed 4 sort of did this, but how hard the sword fight is supposed to be relative to the sizes of your crew. So if you have like 3 guys and you invade a ship with like 400 guys, it's supposed to be a really hard fight. It doesn't necessarily translate that way, and you can pull off some upsets. What would be amazing is like a Dynasty Warriors type thing where like, you're just like fighting like every single guy on the crew all at once. That would have been neat, but probably a little more than you could pull off on a Genesis.
For some reason, there's like 600 guys on the boat, and you have a long pole, and you're just knocking them all off into the ocean. They just keep coming from down below, and you're like, holy crap, how many people are on this boat?
It's just like a real slapstick pirate fight. Like a clown pirate. You're throwing banana peels. Guys are slipping off the deck into the water. And it's like, oh, that's comical that he's going to drown horribly.
So, Pirates of the Caribbean movie.
Basically, yeah.
Those are true-to-life documentaries.
Actually, though, that does kind of raise an interesting point about this game, is that it is, I mean, not like perfectly accurate, but it's a more historically accurate portrayal than you would maybe expect in a Genesis game about pirates. Like, you have a pretty accurate representation of the Caribbean Sea in-game that you're sailing around on. All the cities are where they're supposed to be and everything. And, Cuba is the right relative size to, the Dominican. You can just sail around and sink all the boats and, be like Mr. Badass pirate guy who kills everything. But to get far in the game, you really want to make allies with some of the competing nations. You can get promoted, you become a privateer. So that's really kind of neat and a lot more than you would expect.
I would expect less of a Genesis game, but this is a Genesis game that had Sid Meier behind it. Let's be honest, that man made magic in the early PC days with like Civilization and apparently Pirates that I didn't know about until now, which is a shame because younger me on the PC with this game would have been in heaven.
Man, this guy, Civilization, Pirates, Gettysburg was a good game that not a ton of people played. I mean, it's like him and Will Wright are just... I can't think of anybody else who's really quite as accomplished as either of those two. And really, I mean, Will Wright was SimCity and The Sims, and that might have been, a lot of...
Oh, yeah, Sim Farm, Sim Ant.
Yeah, those weren't great, though.
No, they weren't. Sim Ant was really bad. But Pirates, the level of simulation going on in this Sega Genesis game is ridiculous. And I don't know if I just erased from memory the fact that a lot of Sega Genesis games had speech in them, or it just didn't register in my little brain at the time that games were talking. But there is a lot of speech in this game. It's not amazing. There's like land ho, and I think they say avast when you see another ship on the horizon, which that's a weird thing to me. It's like we see a ship, investigate, and it jumps you out to the ship, and then you can investigate further once you get close, and then you can just say, ask about news. Was this like pirate Twitter? Like, hey, what's the latest?
Could you imagine? Like, you're ferrying cargo from South America to Florida or something, and you just see this ship on the horizon with a black flag, and you're like, oh no, pirates! And they get closer and they get closer, and you're like, get ready to fight. And then the pirates are just like, hey, what's going on in South America? Anything good?
There's a little war. Cool. Peace. This is the worst pirate ever. It's just got the BuzzFeed logo on their flag. Sail around collecting the hot news. Draw other captains in scandalous situations and pass them around.
Here's the top 30 things that we hate about scurvy.
Number 6 will shock you. It's an electric eel.
We should probably describe this game a little bit.
We should.
Yeah, we're only, half an hour into the show, talking about this obscure 16-bit game that probably nobody out there has played. And we're just going to keep talking about, it's Sonic or something.
How could people not play your favorite Genesis game? What is wrong with you, listener? This is Brad's favorite Genesis game. Sure, you just found this out a half hour ago. That's not our fault.
If more people liked it, I probably would just be like, oh, it's not cool anymore.
Brad, pirate hipster.
Yes.
This game is for the most part, it's a top-down strategy game where you have a large landmass and water.
Yeah, it's open world, kind of, which I don't think was a thing back then. But you get your ship, you're out on the ocean, you can go anywhere you want. There are 10 mythical pirate quests. The object of the game is sort of to try to complete them, but really you can make up your own goal for what you want to do. If you want to just amass as much riches as you want, if you want to try to become the highest rank of nobility with each of the 4 competing nations. The one playthrough I did, there's 4 different portraits of single women in the game. Pirates maybe not being known for their discretion. The prettiest one is considered the best and the ugliest one is the worst, and it doesn't really get into what their hobbies are or if they're interesting to talk to or anything like that. It's just look at how nice this one looks in the low-cut dress. That's the best one. And the one time I played through it, and my goal was just to marry the prettiest girl out of the 4 available choices. But then they also... There's 4 main styles, but then they change the hair color or whatever. So I'm okay, I want the number 4 girl with red hair. And it sounds like I'm ordering a woman from Wendy. And that's horrible. But games in the 16-bit era were maybe not quite as progressive as games are now.
One could argue that pirates were not as progressive as most people are now.
That's also fair.
Oh, I'm going to marry the pretty girl. And then she's like, you're not going to pirate anymore. You're going to buy me a house. And he's like, oh.
We'll say that's still kind of the fairy tale version of pirates and their ladies. We're not going to get into all the less noble aspects of that on this show.
No, that's for a different show. It's a one-off.
They met these ladies, they fell in love, and they married them.
That's right.
That's what pirates did.
Yes, pirates are good people.
Except for the robbing and murdering.
Those people all slipped and fell on their own swords, Brad. Another thing you can do is, what I did was try to establish a glorious trade empire. It's a lot harder than one would think. all you do is sail from one town to another saying, hey, you pay more for this, so I'm going to take it here. And my 4 hours of doing this, I was just like, I'm just trading stuff, and I don't know why.
It's like-
Piracy!
I found for you this awesome Genesis game where you get to be a pirate and you get to do all this cool stuff, and you're just like, what is the most boring way I can play this game? I don't want to get in any fights. I don't want to have any adventures. I just want to buy a bunch of sugar in Havana and sail over to Puerto Rico and drop it off and trade it for food.
I did not say that I did not get into fights, because anytime I saw someone on the horizon, they were going down, because my main source of goods was stealing it from other boats and then sinking those boats. That way I didn't have to buy the stuff I was selling, so it's all profit.
There are 3 different types of goods in the game. There is food, there is sugar, and there is manufactured goods. 2 of those are just trading resources. And then the other food is something you actually need for your crew. So if you're not really trying to be a trader, your best option is just to always steal the maximum amount of food that you can carry and leave the other stuff behind, which must be absolutely devastating for the towns that you attack. You go to the town, conquer the town defense, you plunder all the money, you make off with all the food, and they're just left with a big pile of sugar. And they're like, this is what we have to live off of for the next couple of weeks until more food comes.
Well, when I swing back around and like, hey, do you guys want to buy some food? You just stole it from us. I know. Do you want to buy it?
You took all our money. What do you think we're gonna do?
I'll trade you for that hot sugar.
You could have just stolen the sugar in the first place.
Now I gotta level this town because you guys are just being far too difficult. I did notice that your pirate crew are weaklings, because, like, we're hungry.
Yeah.
Oh, we're hungry. It's like, guys, we've literally been out of port for 2 days. We're out of toaster strudels. They whine constantly about being hungry. They're supposed to be pirates and tough.
They went 2 days without food. If I go, like, 4 hours without food, I get really grouchy.
Yeah, but your name's not like Brad, the Blackbeard murder man. You're Brad.
The Hut.
Brad the Hut. I mean, he was probably a pirate of a different sort.
Yeah, I suppose he was. Yeah, I'm not going to pick on your crew for being upset that you haven't fed them in a few days.
Well, you get fed by the quality of pirate you are, so all my pirates sucked, so they didn't get to eat.
It must have just been like the saddest pirate raid. They board the other ship, and it's all these malnourished, lethargic, skeleton-looking guys. Like,
No, see, that's the thing. You don't feed them, and then you're like, this boat has food, and you can eat all the food you can find, and then your raiding party is just berserkers, because they know if they murder everyone, they get a cheese sandwich.
Or they just stab you, and then they go to the captain of the other ship, and they're like, for a little bit of food, you can have this boat that we came here on. You can have a second boat.
And why wasn't I fishing? I'm on a boat. You just throw some lines over the side, you get some fish. I'm not sure how you cook it on a pirate boat. You don't really want to fire on your wooden boat.
We're going to look really good to like all the people who know things about history. I'm sure they cooked on boats.
I'm pretty sure they had like a stone oven place that could contain the fire. Me being a professional piratologist, I'm going to say there's a good chance they had to cook things while they were at sea.
Probably.
I mean, this game should have had a way to simulate being the cook on the boat. Just all you do is cook for the crew. That would be pretty great.
That would just be the type of game that you would like, apparently, to go with all your trading.
Hey, you give me all the options, I'm going to find a way to have fun.
I'll tell you something about this game that is really kind of sad regarding how much I've played it. One of the little kind of side quests you can do is you can buy treasure maps from retired pirates that you find in bars. So you go to a bar and you see like this like old, shady looking guy sitting in a dark corner. He's like, do you want to buy a map to a treasure that's like somewhere? And I don't really know where, but here's a map of it. And you're like, yes, that sounds like it's worth $500. The way it works in the game is like the map is just a screenshot of a small part of the game world. more times than I'd like to admit, I can look at this little thing and immediately be like, oh, that's Puerto Rico. Oh, that's like the coast of Mexico. It is really pathetic that I can do this.
I have a problem with that whole system that you just described. If you're a really good pirate and you retire, you should have enough riches that you don't have to go to the bar and sell a crappy map for 500 gold to some wet behind the ears pirate. Whatever he's selling you a map to probably isn't a great treasure. It's like a box with a note inside that says the treasure was the journey here. And you're like, oh, your crew's like, what was the treasure? It was mystical beyond description. We can't actually touch it because our faces will melt a la Indiana Jones.
I'm just imagining like this pirate like sitting there with a little calculator and figuring out, okay, so I buried 1,000 gold coins on that island. It's going to cost me like $200 to get out there. My time has some value to it. What should I sell this map for? What's fair? It's just more worthwhile for me to just sell the thing than go out and get it myself.
Are you saying retired pirates become economists?
You don't get to become a retired pirate by just throwing money away. I'm sure they're doing a very thorough cost-expense analysis.
The hardest part about being a pirate captain is all the spreadsheets all over your tables at all time.
Oh yeah, they didn't have Excel back then. They had to do all these spreadsheets by hand. And if they change one number, they gotta go through and change, all the ones that were dependent on that.
He kicks open the door and he's like, who has my TPS report?
They take over, they raid a ship, and they're just, like lining up all the crew members to desert on some island. They're like, are any of you accountants? We need somebody to work on our spreadsheets. The rest of you get marooned.
I'm gonna need someone to come in on Saturday. Yeah, I mean, it had to be rough to be a pirate and try to keep track of your finances because you're burying them on islands everywhere. It's really gotta be hard to control your money when you're constantly sailing away from it.
Do you think they needed filing cabinets for all their maps? You don't want to just crumple them up and throw them in the corner. I mean, that's like a map to, I don't know, thousands of dollars. You want to keep that stuff organized.
I think you have just cracked the code of why pirates had parrots. They're like, Polly, remember I put this map in the corner behind the bed. And the parrot's like, in the corner behind the bed. It was like early Siri. Where did I put the Philippines map? Under the table, in 300 feet turn. I know where the table is. So this game gave me some perspective on actual life, which is weird. We talked about it a little bit earlier. I never thought about the horrors of a ship-to-ship battle. And I was like, hey, these are fun mechanics. And then I realized these are fun mechanics based on probably the most hell-raising situation you could be in. Turning your ship so all the cannons are pointed at the side of the ship, where all their cannons are pointed directly back at you, and then firing giant balls of metal at each other. You're in a wooden boat, and if you get enough holes in a boat, my pirateology degree tells me that boat goes to the bottom of the ocean.
I don't know if you've ever been out in the ocean at all, or seen it. It's big. It's really big. And this isn't even the open ocean. This is the Caribbean Sea. And there's, a lot of islands, but still, there's a lot of distance between those islands. From Cuba to the United States is 90 miles, and they consider that to be not very far. You don't want to sink, say halfway in between 45 miles from land. That's not a place you want to be.
No, you cannot swim that gap. But what can swim that gap is sharks. And they will eat you. You will be a delicious pirate treat. I played Assassin's Creed 3 and you did some of that ship-to-ship combat.
It was the only good part of that game.
Yeah, the game was hot trash. It didn't sink into me there because the combat in that game was so fast. But here, it is not fast. It is aggravating to turn your boat when they're turning their boat. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to make this shot. And they are going to just shoot 6 cannons into the side of my 2-cannon boat. I better just ram them. And I don't understand the logistics of boats ramming each other. That had to be very scary.
Probably. You think about this, it's not a mutual kind of thing. It's like sometimes ships will meet up in open water and they'll line up and very carefully get close enough that you can go from one to the other. This isn't that. Like, one ship does not want a bunch of pirates coming onto it. So they're trying to not be agreeable about it. So you gotta, like, ram it and then, like, throw hooks onto it and, like, tie it to your boat and, like, swing over on a rope or, like, put down boards and run across the boards. If you can imagine, like, being on the ship being attacked by the pirates, that is terrifying. Like, this big boat is going to crash into you, and then a bunch of professional murderers with swords and guns are going to jump onto the boat that you've been, like, living on for the last few months and just start killing everyone.
Yeah, it would be so scary. And if someone kicks the board as you're running across, you're going to fall in between those boats. This game gave me some just dread about what that was like, which I don't think was the point of this game.
No, it's a cheerful game.
I saw into the true horror of what was happening here through 16-bit sprites.
I mean, this game is bright colors. It's upbeat music. This some of my favorite music in a game. And I say that a lot. I said that about Double Dragon. I said it about Mega Man 2. I like game music in general, and like I really like the music in Pirates Gold. The opening theme is a real song. It's a Genesis version of an old sailing song that I spent years trying to figure out what that was actually called, because I'd heard it in like dozens of other things. I never knew what it was called. The name of the tune is Sailor's Hornpipe. You can look it up on YouTube if you want, but yeah, it was like became a quest for me to figure out what the opening theme song to Pirates Gold was actually called. I was very happy when I did find that out, but the point is there's a lot of good music in this game. The graphics, you can tell that it was a PC game first. It has kind of that art style to it. A lot of times, like if you're talking to a character, it's like their portrait, and it'll have like just like the slightest bit of animation, you know, but really good looking game.
We need to talk about one of my favorite characters in this entire game.
Okay.
It's the bartender. So when you talk to the bartender, it gives a flavor text of like, you tell the bartender of all your great exploits, and he smiles and listens nicely. And the guy in the picture is just like, you're a joke. Why are you in my bar? But he's listening to you because you got money and you're a pirate, so you're going to drink a lot. But you can tell from that picture he does not care about anything you're saying. And I loved him for that.
You know, I mean, if you think about it, like, you're coming into that bar, you're either like a scary pirate who's like just like ransacked a bunch of towns, or, you know, if you're playing through working with the governors and stuff, you're basically a war hero. You're like, you know, in this French colony, and you're like, yeah, I just like took over like a whole Spanish city and gave it to the French. And the bartender's like,
So that guy over there, what's the big deal? I like the also like the shipwright. You can sell ships that you have captured, and you go to sell a ship, and he's like, do you want to give me any cannons with that? It's like, what? No, this is what I use to defend myself from the merchant ships that obviously attack me constantly.
These angry merchants.
Also, going back to the news thing, that encounter can go one of two ways in this game. No, three ways. You can ask for news, you can start the attack, or you can just leave. So they're all standing there on the ship with huge eyes, wondering what's about to happen. And there's the aforementioned option of, hey, what's going on? And then there's just attack, or there's they kind of look at you for a minute, shrug their shoulders, and then their boat kind of just veers away. Those are the options. Like, go get up in their grill, show them that you could, and then just slowly drift away.
So we touched on it a little bit earlier, but you can get married in this game. The way that works is if you work for the governors of the different cities, they will introduce you to their daughters, which seems like not the best idea. It's like, hey, this guy's a smelly murderer. Meet my daughter. They're all engaged to somebody. But if you have a higher ranking than whoever they're engaged to, they might turn their interest to you, and then you have to go murder their, intended.
I was going to say, are they engaged to a corpse?
A future corpse.
A corpse that just has not come to the realization it's a corpse yet.
That's how you meet girls in pirate land, is you do odd jobs for their fathers.
And you'd think if they're engaged to someone, I don't know if it's like a marriage for power or what's going on in this situation, they might actually be in love with the person they're engaged to. And then their father's like, meet this pirate. He took Puerto Rico for us. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to go see Robert. And you're like, Robert? Who's Robert? And then you walk out while she's arguing with her dad. And Robert's like, oh, I'm here to see Bethany. You shove a rapier through his throat. Then come back inside and is like, I just saw Robert outside. He's dead. Somebody killed him. And she's not like, oh, I'm so sad. She's like, meh, I guess you'll do. That's definitely not how me getting married worked. I had to murder nobody.
Really? No murders?
Yeah.
Wow.
So far in my life, I'm up to 0 murders.
I didn't have to murder anybody, but I did have to do odd jobs for the governor until I had achieved the rank of count and had been granted like 40 acres of property in a unsettled territory.
I did not know I was in the presence of a count.
Yeah, they actually banned the aristocracy when they wrote the Constitution, so it's more of a ceremonial title.
You were like, oh man, stupid 1776.
I used to be somebody until the Revolutionary War.
It just ruined everything. I had a cool coat. Yeah, I mean, it's so good. It's so fun. I did not know what I was going in expecting, or did not expect it to be so great. I mean, you were very hyped on it the last couple weeks we talked. Like, it's coming up, it's coming up. You were very excited.
Yeah, this is like Christmas for me.
I just realized for your favorite game, you did not tell people your little patented info dump.
Oh, yeah. Pirates Gold is it was published by Microprose. It was Sid Meier or Sid Meier?
I think it's Sid Meier. I've always said Sid Meier, so let's make that show canon.
There was originally the very first PC game came out in 1987, 86, 87, somewhere in there, and it was also ported on the NES. It didn't really go over too hugely. Then they made Pirates Gold, which is a bigger, better, improved version, and that was on the PC and then on the Genesis. And that was released in 1993. Again, didn't sell like crazy. Did okay on the PC, but the Genesis version, pretty obscure, kind of rare, hard to find these days. And then remade again in 2005 for the Xbox and the PC. And that's also a really good game. You know, usually with these re-releases, they either change them drastically, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but either way, it feels a lot different. But this is really just a modernized, improved version of the same game. And it's got the sword fighting and the doing jobs for, governors and sailing around the Caribbean. They added a dancing mini game because it was 2005 and that was all the rage. But it's not too bad. And they made the land battles, which are probably the weakest part of the Genesis game. They made those so that they're actually pretty fun.
So we have not talked about the sword fighting so far, which is a big part of this game, actually. So when you get into a scuffle, you see the exact same pirate over and over in a little art window. And it says, do you want to fight with? And it gives you a rapier, longsword,
or cutlass.
And I didn't know exactly how to pick the different items. I thought they would pull out what they're going to use in the little picture, but they always pulled out the same sword, and it didn't seem to affect the image once you get into the sword battle. I came to the same conclusion as you, is it's attack up, up, down, and you can run over anyone in that game. So the sword combat in the Genesis one is not deep.
No. The game is basically made up of several different kind of mini games. There's the ship combat, there's the sword fights, there are land battles, but they don't come up too often and usually just kind of get routed because they're not super well done. I play on the lowest difficulty most of the time, and the sword fights are pretty easy. You take the rapier and you just pin cushion the other guy. You don't even try to block or or defend or anything. Just attack, 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 stab them in the face, stab them in the gut, and you can win pretty quickly. It sounds like it's maybe not that much fun because it's kind of easy, but the game is really about the strategy. It's about trying to amass a big crew, keep them happy, keep them fed. You know, the sword fights are just kind of like a little mini game to break up the monotony and keep things interesting, and it does a great job of it. But you're really just trying to plan out efficient routes and manage your ship and your crew.
Every little bit of this game is an important cog in the overall machine. You can't just look at one little point of it and say, oh, this isn't broken, because it leads into the next thing, which is looting that ship and then clicking the button that says sink this thing. You can send it off as a prize and sell it later, but I never had enough men to actually make that work.
You can go about how you want to play the game different ways. You can try to amass giant ships with lots of cannons and big crews, and then you can take over like really big settlements and really wreak havoc, but it's high maintenance. It's really hard to keep a crew that big happy for very long. There just aren't a lot of big targets. It's kind of like when you play Skyrim, you can make any kind of character you want, but stealthy archer is usually the most effective, and that ends up being your default a lot of the time if you're not intentionally trying to do something else. And Pirates Gold, like, your default is usually like a smallish crew in a ship that is small enough to sail over the coral reefs without sinking. And that's usually what I ended up going with. And you can play it pretty effectively that way. You know, I've had games where I married the redhead, games where I became, I think Duke is the highest title you can get. I became Duke for multiple countries. Somewhere out in the world, it's a VHS tape with the recording of the ending you get when you complete all 10 pirate quests, which I did once, and I recorded it on my VCR just to prove that I could actually do it. You know, you just like Twitch that kind of stuff now, I guess. But
you early PS shared. Nice.
Yeah, I totally, you know, like my friends would come over and be like, here's the ending to Pirates Gold if you do all 10 pirate quests. And like, we don't know what any of those words mean.
Like, oh, Brad's a nerd.
We're not going to be friends anymore.
I was really delighted this week. It came about Monday and I was like, I need to try this. And then every night I was like, I need to keep trying this, because at first I was really bad. And I don't like it when games get the better of me. So I just kept banging my head against it until the systems started revealing themselves to me. And once you start seeing how the entire clockwork works, that's when that game just clicks and you're like, there is so much going on in a Sega Genesis game. This is ridiculous. Like you said, you can sail anywhere in the world. You're probably going to have your crew die of starvation before you get there, but your boat will eventually drift into a port. And you're like, I got to Florida from India, I win.
There's a lot going on in this game, like beneath the surface. You know, one thing that's kind of cool is like, if you attack a city and you just plunder it and you take all their gold and all their food and all their manufactured goods because you had a little extra room in the cargo hold and just leave them with a couple bags of sugar, depending on how big that city was and connected to other things, it might not ever really recover from that. Like you could go back like 10 years later in the game and it's still like impoverished and, you know, like not as good as it was before you raided it. And some of the bigger, more mainstream cities will recover a lot quicker. There's also like diseases like going through, and like you'll find out that like malaria hit one town and you're like, now it's easy pickings. You know, now I can go there and plunder it myself and it'll be a lot easier. And there's other pirates. You know, you could find out that pirates already attacked that town and it's not worth going to see.
Yeah, it's high quality. I highly recommend it. It's really easy to decide if you're the villain in the game or not, because it's literally called Pirates! Gold. You're the bad guy.
It's a matter of perspective.
Nope. Pirates are bad guys.
To the English king that's hiring you to murder all the Spaniards, you're like the best guy.
Yes, but to the English king, the Crusades seemed like a good idea. So there's that. Kings don't always make the best choices.
No, that actually reminds me of something else in the game, though, is if you take over a town with overwhelming force, and I think it has to be like about the size of your crew is 3 times the size of the city guard, you literally take that town over. you can assign a governor of whatever nationality you want. And that city, you can like conquer a Spanish town and give it to the English or the Dutch or whatever. I was thinking maybe we should pick our leaders that way. Like we'll just have pirates take over the Washington and they'll decide who's going to run the country from now on. Just be like, oh, the pirate decided.
I believe that's how we get to the world of Mad Max. So, pirates! Gold.
I think for the rest of the show we have to say, pirates! Gold.
So, pirates! Gold.
That won't get annoying at all. Our listeners will love it.
Yes, they will love it, because they love us.
We're really pushing that theory right now.
Yeah, we are. I have no basis of that, but I just believe that they adore us. Pirates Gold, it's good. You should play it. Brad, any final thoughts on Pirates Gold? !
No, I mean, definitely, if you are interested in 16-bit games, if it's, something that you still enjoy loading up games from 20 years ago and playing them, you definitely want to check this one out. It does have a bit of a learning curve. You can go like Donald and just keep beating your head against the wall until you figure it out, or, you can get an FAQ online and just kind of pick up some tips on the game. It can be a little tricky at first, but it's super fun. I can't say enough good stuff about it. Definitely check it out. If you want something a little more modern, you can get the 2005 one. It does work on the Xbox 360. I don't think they made it work on the One yet. I don't think that's probably a very high priority for them. It's also available on Steam. So, yeah, definitely check out this series. You're not going to be disappointed.
You just said if you're the kind of person who wants to boot up a 20-year-old game. To the listeners of a show about games that are 20 years old, I'm going to guess the overlapping circle for that is probably.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
So, that's it. Pirates Gold. We talked about Brad's favorite Sega Genesis game.
Yes, and henceforth, I'm going to just start throwing exclamations into the middle of sentences.
And people will love you for it.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are going to think it's great.
If you want to find us on Twitter, we are now at Cart-Based Radio, and we are on Facebook for Cartridge-Based Radio. You've heard us do this like 20 different times. If you know how to get a hold of us now,
Yeah, the other thing is my vessel is docked in the port of Tacoma, so you can just sail on down and hail me for news.
Our show is great. Thank you. Yeah, rate, review. Do all those neat things for us.
If you like our Facebook page and you see the link, if you like or share that, it'll broadcast that to all your Facebook friends, and then they can see it and be like, well, this sounds pretty great. I should also dig this. And maybe I will like or share it as well. And we will just spread like some kind of disease.
I think that's going to do it for our piratey episode, where we managed to very minimally talk as pirates. I am Donald, that is Brad.
Hi.
And we will see you next week.
Captain Lipton's crew drinks Captain Lipton's brew. It's good for me and it's good for you too.